Hi, welcome to Actual Spinster. Do you think if I put a thumbnail that's me going like this, I'll get loads of views on BookTube? Anyway, welcome to Actual Spinster. My name is Anna Marie. Before I get into the video, there's a GoFundMe link in the description box to a GoFundMe for Ala and her family whilst they're stuck in Gaza, and if you could check that out, I would be grateful. Today's video is a book haul of all the classic books that I got in 2024. I'm like pretty good at getting books for free or for really cheap, so I would say like a third of these were free. I benefit greatly from the fact that I go to university. I also wanted to check a lot of these out because I was doing my trying to read over 50% published before the year 2000 kind of project this year. So I definitely, was getting interested in these titles partially through that. I think I've only read 5 of these books, which does feel quite low and I don't really like. But I was doing some calculations and I have read over the number of these books that I've bought. Like, I have read more classics than this number, so that does tell me some good things. And like I said in a previous video, like I definitely have been trying to get a handle on, you know, how many books I'm bringing into my life physically, especially in the context of like already having access to all of these books and then also having access to a bunch of libraries. So, you know, we're definitely still like on the pathway for that. But I wanted to share because I thought it would be interesting. And there's also like a couple ones that like I think I made a video about like the Victorian books on my TBR, and after Victober I picked up a few more Victorian books because I was just like, oh well, I may as well. I kind of put them in the order that I think I got these, but I honestly can't really remember that well, but we'll see. One of the first ones is Bread Givers by Anzia Yezierska, which is a novel about like Jewish life in the 1880s in America? No, set during the 1920s on New York's Lower East Side. And as like now a fan of New York, a reluctant fan of New York, interested in reading this. It's also, I think it was written also in the 20s, so it's very, and it has pictures in, I think, which is also quite interesting. Yeah. So that's definitely one to check out. And the other reason, I wanted to say that the other reason I thought I would make this video is because it kind of, I don't think I'll read all of these that I haven't read next year, but it also does kind of work as like a little snapshot of some of the reading that I hope to be doing. I'm not going to set, I think, like a percentage or anything like that, but it would be great to read like a large chunk of these books, and I obviously want to, so. Another book I got in is this, which is City Folk and Country Folk. Okay, I mean, it feels like a little bit weird to talk about Russian literature right now, so I guess I'll keep it brief, but I do find it really frustrating that a lot of the discussion about Russian literature online basically only focuses on men authors. Definitely contemporary discussion is like a little bit less bad. In terms of like classics, it's almost every single video that is about like Russian classics is like never mentions a single woman in it, which I just find kind of flabbergasting and also pretty frustrating, in how people like uphold like a national literary tradition that is just so male and they don't seem to like think about that at all. Not something I'm a fan of. I started to do this a long time before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but I was starting to look for like Russian novels by women, which is why I read Sophia Petrovna. Is that what it was called, or is that the name of the author? I can't remember, but I'll put a picture of it here. And that one's from the 60s, I think. Or maybe, no, it was written in the 30s, but it was finally published in the 60s, something like that. So yeah, but then I found this, and this one is, I think it's set in the 1860s, so I think it was written in the 1860s. And then the person who translated it is Nora Seligman Favorov. Not really sure when I got these, but this was really vibes-based, and it doesn't really matter. So this is Miss Nobody by Ethel Carney. I still haven't read this. I am really hoping to read this winter. This is like definitely in the kind of like prioritizing books, and I did really want to pick up earlier, but I've been reading so badly and like struggling so much recently. It hasn't been happening. This I showed more recently because I read a short story in it, and yeah, but I haven't read the others. There's 13 I think overall, so I've still got 12 to read. This isn't like very high on my priority list, but I will maybe dip in and out when I'm interested. I actually started rereading Five Children and It recently because I just was like, I wanted to. Also, yeah, I haven't said this, but I've basically included like things from the very early 1980s and then back from there in this, which I suppose maybe I should have done more, but it doesn't really matter. Like, I don't, this was all vibes based, like, if you can't tell. So this is Patience and Sarah by Isabel Miller, which is like a lesbian story, I think set in the 1820s, and yeah, it's published by the Whims Press, which I have a few books by, and still haven't read it. Here's another book that I've shown a bunch this year and I really wanted to get to, but I just like didn't. But that's A Woman's Affair by Leanne Dupuy, translated by Graham Anderson, and I did also kind of mean to include it in my like French reading for my project next year, so hopefully I'll read it next year, if not in the final few weeks of 2024, which is not looking likely, but you know, we can hold out hope. Okay, we have a book I have read, and that's Who Was Changed and Who Was Dead by Barbara Comins. Yeah, this is like a really interesting, strange, somewhat disturbing book. I wouldn't like wholesale recommend this. I don't think it's like just something that like anybody would enjoy. It's about like sort of dysfunctional families. Yeah, dysfunctional families. It's set in this like little village, and there's a fever, plague kind of thing going through it. And we send it on this like very wealthy family. Yeah, but it's a very short chunk, so it's like quite a slice of life, and I do think it's kind of surreal, but it's not actually so surreal that it feels surreal. It's just more like the energy, or like the sort of frame of reference feels kind of like that, and I am interested in reading more Barbara Comins after that, so yeah. The next is The Snowball by Bridget Brophy, which I did want to read for Shorty September, and that makes me think that maybe I got this later in the year, but whatever. Yeah, I haven't read this. I said this before, but Bert from Post Time talked about it a while ago and recommended it to me. I want to read it. This is really truly a list of books that I want to read. Then we have a Thomas Hardy book. This was like a gift, which was really sweet, and it's Desperate Remedies, which is his first novel. I've talked now again fairly recently about like struggling to figure out where next to read with Thomas Hardy, but yeah, I think I might go with The Mayor of Casterbridge at this point, but I could also pick this up, we'll see. Next we have quite like a large number of translated fiction, because obviously I was like having a moment there. So we have Lies and Sorcery by Elsa Morante, translated by Jenny McPhee. Have not read this. Got interested in it partially through reading a lot of Natalia Ginsburg, but like I think this sounds really interesting, and I definitely want to get to it. Then we have one that I'm currently reading, and that is Silk of the Wild by Zuzman Segalovich. I'm not sure if I will finish this before the end of the year. I'm like reading it very slowly because I basically am kind of choosing to read it mostly on like Jewish days in Jewish time, so reading it on a Shabbat, for example. Although maybe I will read it through Hanukkah. That could be fun. The only thing is, I kind of would like to read like a whole one book instead of, I've already started this. But like, yeah, anyway, so we'll see if I do. But I'm enjoying it so far. Oh, it's translated by Daniel Kennedy. I do have another that I've read, and this is also from the same press as Silk of the Wild. That's During Sleepless Nights and Other Stories by Anna Margolin, which is also translated by Daniel Kennedy. This is also from the Yiddish, and yeah, it's a collection of short stories. I wouldn't say these have like massively stayed with me, but I did enjoy reading them, and I really liked learning about Anna Margolin. And she's so sweet in that picture. Yeah, she's sort of known as a poet, I think, more so than a prose writer, but she was also writing prose, and there's like a kind of siloing of a lot of like Yiddish women writers, I think, that happens where they're like seen as just poets when actually they were also producing prose. Speaking of more Yiddish women writers, yeah, this was like, I think this was like in April when I just like had like a big deadline and I handed in, and then I bought myself a few Yiddish books as like a little congrats present. So this is A Provincial Newspaper and Other Stories by Miriam Karpilov, which is translated by Jessica Kazane. It's a collection of stories again. I think one of them is much longer than the other. Yeah, I think a provincial newspaper is like, yeah, I think like a provincial newspaper is like this much of the collection, and then there's like some non-fiction as well as like quite a few short stories. Miriam Karpilov and I politically I don't think would agree, but I have been enjoying reading her work. So I kind of imagine I might have like a bit of a difficult experience with this, like more so than her other novels, because I really enjoyed those, and again from a political perspective they're more in line with my own feelings. I know she talks about visiting Israel in this, which is partially why I have like a hesitancy around that. The next is kind of a book I've got free because I ordered another book and then they were like, we can't find it, what book would you like instead? So then I picked this, which is Cassandra by Christa Wolf, which is translated by Jan van Herk from German. Again, another book that I'm very interested but I haven't read. This is like an East German book, and I think it takes the story of Cassandra and is partially writing a story about the censorship and surveillance under the Soviet Union and in East Germany. Like, it's really time to read it, you know? As usual, I kicked my phone. So, the next I have is Open Door, which is a Scottish book from the 1920s by Catherine Carswell. And, you know, it does sound really interesting. It's about like a woman who studies art, I think. And it's set in Glasgow, which is interesting. And it was published in 1920, and I was looking for things published in 1920 for my 1920s reading project, because there were a couple years that I don't have things bookmarked for, like less things, and I think 1920 is one of them. I think there's The Age of Innocence, and there's also Open the Door now, but there might be some more. Then finally we can talk about a book I have read, and that's The Road to the City by Natalia Ginsberg, and this edition was translated by Jeannie El Hadeth. Yeah, I talked about this quite a lot, so I'm not gonna talk much, but I thought this was an interesting, and I do think it was a better translation than the other translation I read this year, despite what I had heard about it, and I definitely enjoyed it more the second time with this translation than my first read. Next we have this book, Dictee by Teresa Hack Kyung Cha, which looks like a really interesting experimental work. I've heard some really good things about it. And I'm definitely looking forward to it. I think it is also about translation, and obviously I guess from the title I'll be definitely interested to read more about this and like consume stuff about it when I've read it. But yeah, I know I have a friend who I haven't spoken to in a long time because we are no longer in the same city, but like we still follow each other on like various book apps, and I know that she like loves this book and wrote a really wonderful review about it like maybe a couple years ago now, and since then I've been like, oh, I should keep my eye open for it. So when I saw it I also was like, oh, perfect. Then we have a book that's also in my French reading TBR, which is Claudine at School by Colette, and this one is translated by Antonia White. Don't need to say much more about it, I think. Okay, then we have some more books that I got free, partially because people like, you know, in the English department sometimes like put books that they were studying and no longer want that, and then when you're like a little magpie about it, you can pick those up. So this is Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. I like this image on the cover. And then we have another Thomas Hardy novel on my shelves. Actually, I think maybe the order of these should be different, but it doesn't really matter. This is The Mayor of Casterbridge, and yeah, I think, like I said, that this is the one I'm gonna maybe read next. But who knows? We've got The First Men in the Moon by H.G. Wells, which I read in November, which was like an okay book and like kind of interesting. Oh, I see I've folded down a few pages. And I do feel like it gave me an interesting sense of like what H.G. was publishing. H.G. Wells, sorry. Suddenly treating H.G. Wells like H.D. as in Hilda Doolittle. Yeah, but it was interesting to see, like, to get a glimpse at what he was publishing, because I know this was published in the UK, but also in America they picked it up. And then here's another that I haven't read, but like it's definitely on the cards to read soon. And yeah, I think I did talk about this too in my, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure I talked about it in my like Victorian books on my TBR, and also something I'd like because yeah, I picked it up. But that was because yeah, I'm an opportunist, like I said. So this is Esther Waters by George Moore. It's a novel from 1890s about a young working class woman, and I think like, yeah, what happens when she has an illegitimate child. And I'm really interested because I know that some of the women that I write about in my PhD like talked about and reviewed this novel, and so I'd really like to know what they were talking about it and also what they thought about it. And then here's another book that is one that I mentioned that I wanted in that Victorian TBR video, because I like read a few of the books on my TBR. I was like, that means I can justify getting some more. But this is A Sunless Heart by Edith Johnstone, which actually does look to be quite like difficult, because I think it seems to be about abusive behaviour and relationships to some degree, but it also seems to be about a really deeply emotional connection between two women. Yeah, but I'm definitely intrigued from the perspective of like queer novels, and also it does look like it's interested in female work, which is what it says on the back, in the late Victorian period, sexual perspective, abusive behaviour and searing poverty. So definitely, yeah, could be really fascinating. A very like sad picture on the cover there, which for Andrea Leanne, who asked last time when I showed a broad view photograph, this says Isabella Grace and Clementina Maud, and it's from 1863, and it was taken by Lady Clementina Howardin? Something like that, which is interesting, but also I feel like this is not the right time period, but there we go. And then finally, lastly, and almost most randomly, we have this, which is quite a big book. It's like a bind-up of 4 revenge tragedies, as I said on the title. The Spanish Tragedy, The Revenger's Tragedy, 'Tis Pity She's a Whore, and The White Devil. I have actually read 'Tis Pity She's a Whore. I just like, listen, I am like a nerd, and like I just got kind of interested in like reading these again / reading them. I think I know the Spanish Tragedy, and then 'Tis Pity She's a Whore, like I said. And then the other 2 I don't think I read. Oh, I could have read The Revenger's Tragedy and 'Tis Pity She's a Whore, and not the other 2. But I can't remember. But also, yeah, this was a long time ago. And I also have my like sights set on like trying to do some kind of play reading group or something. Because I do really want to read plays, but I also feel like you miss out so much on plays if you don't hear or read them aloud. I don't know, let me know if you'd be interested in like some kind of project where we read some plays. I have a couple like early modern plays, and then, yeah, so plays from like the 1500s to the 1650s, I guess. And I do really want to read some Margaret Cavendish. To be honest, I do really like this Bloomsbury imprint, like New Mermaids, which do print like a bunch of plays, but they print so few women. They print maybe like Aphra Behn, who I do have a play by actually. And yeah, I think she was actually writing in the 1660s, wasn't she? And a bit later, so perhaps it is a bit more later than that. And then who else? There was one other woman that I was like, oh yeah, they have a play by, I think her name is Elizabeth Cary, which is called like The Tragedy of Mariam, which also is a play that I, you know, squirreled away from the English department, because they do study it like in the department. So there's lots of copies left. But it looks interesting also because I'm pretty sure Mariam is Jewish, but I could be incorrect. But yeah, there don't seem to be that many women published by them, which I think is a real shame. But anyway, that was like a little bit of a tangent. The point is, if anybody would be interested in reading some plays with me, let me know. I feel like I've completely lost a lot of the light, so I'm definitely going to end it there, but I also have finished going through all of those books. Yeah, like let me know if you've read any of these, or what you thought about them. I'm definitely really looking forward to checking these out, and I really should stop bringing so many books into my life when I have a great many that are very interesting to me already on my shelves. Yeah, I think that's everything I had to share today. I hope you're having a good day when you're watching this, and I will talk to you when I next talk to you. Bye!